just wanted to understand how many parents are there in this room with special kids? That's great. So, as a parent of a special child, when a child gets diagnosed with autism, our whole life changes. The whole thing, the whole environment changes, and our struggles begin. And that's what is my story and how I started. So, I have a son who's on the spectrum, and I have been a lifelong entrepreneur. And I also created many companies, sold companies, and also built an accelerator in the past. But now I'm taking a path to create an organization which is personal for so many of us in terms of changing the status quo, and that's what we are all looking at. So when you look at the statistics, what is there in autism, and 3.5 million people in US, 1% of the world's population, we also see the amount of spend which is happening. Currently close to $300 billion a year is being spent in this space per year, and so we are focused on one part of it, and thanks to Joe and his team for inviting us to talk about this. So now we are looking at other part where, let's see how we can use the new things which are coming in AR, in VR, in artificial intelligence, in machine learning, in robotics, in quantum computing, edge computing. So when you look at this new technologies, and then we look at the problem areas, what we are facing today: anxiety, executive functioning, communication disorders, employment, underemployment, and the issues like nutrition. This list goes on and on. And when we look at all of this, we say that is medicine the only answer, or there's something beyond medicine? So that's where whole Uplift is, to start something on another path. But most important thing is we want to create a path where we want to work closely with medicine, because we want to accelerate innovation, and that we can do when all of us work together. Parents are the most important community in this space, and that's where we are bringing this together in terms of the parents' inputs as well as the community's inputs, the scientists, the foundations, the technologists, and everybody together. Let's see, let's change for our children, let's change for the future generation. That's where Uplift is coming from. And to do the whole thing, we have started this as a impact fund and an accelerator. That's what we are trying to build. And as I talked to you about, we want to focus on problems which are pervasive, and we are partnering with different organizations having different domain expertise. Somebody has expertise on aging and autism. Somebody has experience in genomics and autism. Somebody has experience in nutrition and autism. Somebody has experience in AI and autism. So, but the whole concept for us is we want to bring everybody together and accelerate innovation. We cannot work in silos. If you work in silos, the situation will be the same year after year after year. So do we want to have a change? Yes? Yes? The yes is not so strong. We need to change. We need to change the status quo, and that is where we are creating a path for all parents, for the community, for all our different organizations to build, and that's what we are trying. And to do this, we had to really think. So over the last 1 year, we have been talking to accelerators, we have been talking to thought leaders in this space, we have been talking to researchers in this space, you're talking to parents in this space, you're talking to everybody. And then we decided that what is the best way of us to accelerate innovation. And we came up with a very unique model. How do I take, is it? Yeah. How do I go back? Yeah. So we looked at different models, and we thought that the best way to accelerate innovation is to create a hub and spoke model, which has never been done in the whole space of acceleration. So the hub is going to be a virtual accelerator, which is going to be focused on program management, seed investment, and mentorship. Mentorship is a very important component for startups. So what we are talking today is creating entrepreneurs and startups and accelerating innovations in the space, but also looking at evidence, also looking at things which are needed to ensure that the new technologies which are coming out and people don't market it in the name of autism and parents see it's a magic and they're going to invest in it. No, we don't want that. So we are going to be very, very careful in selecting the companies. We are going to be very, very careful in investing in companies which, and if they don't have an impact, we are not going to invest in them. That's it. That is our focus. So the accelerator with all of that, and then the spokes is where the whole physical acceleration will happen. Spokes are organizations with a lot of expertise, as I talked to you about, AI and autism, or genomics and autism, or autism and nutrition. So all these different things which organizations are there. So our startups are going to be embedded within those organizations. So they get additional mentorships from domain experts who will be based in these institutions. And that is, after long thinking, we came up with this business model. We are still very early. We are planning to launch next year. And I would love that we can have a lot of questions related to what we are trying to do. And you can meet me after and my team after this panel. And we would love to get your feedback on what we are trying to do. So I want all of you to be involved in this, because if we are not involved, we are not going to get the change. So request all of you to get involved in this. Thank you. Now, coming on to the other part of it, I have a great panel of speakers who I would like to introduce and would get them to come on stage. Julie, she is a great applied XR guru. So she's working in very cool technologies, but these cool technologies also have an impact in VR, in AR, and XR. So this is very interesting what she's going to talk about. She's a thought leader, and she's going to introduce herself. Then I have Chris, who's a great expert in gamification and using gamifications to build communication skills for our children, so that it's a new way of learning and a new way of talking about solutions. And then I have Jack, who is a nutrigenomics expert. So we are not talking of genomics, we're not talking of nutrigenomics. So I wanted to bring a very different panel into this, this discussion, so that all of us get the feedback from them from the other side. And I hope that you have a lot of questions. So we'll have about 15 minutes talking to the panel, and I want to have an interactive discussion with all of you. And then we want to complete this panel on time so that we can go out for lunch on time. Thank you. Julie, can you start your...
Hello. Okay. So just to introduce myself briefly, I've been working for over 32 years in applied advanced technologies, but the last 15 years I've been working in 3D and immersion. And I am currently a PhD candidate at UCD in Dublin in applied XR in health and well-being, with a focus on applied AR for autism. The other expertise that I would bring to the table, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've owned 6 companies. And in the area of innovation, I've been working with adults and transition-age teens, in particular with autism. And I have been coaching these young people in digital careers for about 8 years. And so that sort of pushed me into a PhD in applied XR, in its ability to help in the area of transition-age teens and young adults, particularly focused, and I can talk later about it, in employment areas. So.
Thank you, Julie. Chris.
Chris Dudick, CEO of Silas. My path started about 12 years ago. I created a company doing technology-based educational programs after school, video game design, animation, music production, things like that. Early on, I realized a lot of the students that were coming were special ed students. I reached out to a speech-language pathologist because I was having issues with behaviors and social skills within these classes, and kind of put it together that there really wasn't anything. She was doing stuff for the last 35 years, basically traditional social skills, and it never really changed. But students have changed, kids have changed. 21st century learning, they're using technology every day. Traditional social skills programs don't really allow that. So I was getting the kids motivated, excited to be there. She was doing the traditional social skills. And over the course of about 10 years, we developed a great program, did some basic research with Kane University and Princeton University, used those studies to get a National Science Foundation grant, and 2017 we started developing the product. We've been selling it to schools for the last 2 years. We're in about 6 states, almost 50 different districts, and basically it's a video game, but they don't think it's a video game. And it's the absolute last thing they do. It's a traditional program. They use traditional means of teaching, but the last thing they do is they select avatars, they put microphones on their heads, and they can role play and practice social situations through whoever they'd like to be. And it records it and then produces an animation, a social story, that they can immediately watch. And it can go with them wherever they like. So it's a little bit about that.
Good morning. I'm Jack Vanden, and a couple disclaimers. I'm a professor. So I like to hear my voice, so I might ramble, but I have no slides to direct me, so I'm really lost up here. The other disclaimer is I'm not an autism expert. I'm an expert in nutrition and how nutrients interact with our genome and regulate cellular function. And it's kind of started from some of the work that I was doing in toxicology and pharmacology, trying to understand druggable targets, in developing ways to screen for new drugs. And this kind of led into thinking about other types of foreign molecules, but these that are present in our diet that are able to interact with what I'll call neutrable targets and affect cellular function. And at Penn State, where I currently reside, we were doing a lot of work in understanding how certain dietary components, in particular fatty acids that are present in our diet, are able to cause all these different beneficial effects. And we formed the Center for Nutrigenomics to try to understand the mechanisms by which different nutrients cause their beneficial effects, to design ways for screening for new botanicals that may have beneficial effects, and then also translate this into the clinic where we can actually start to do clinical trials. While doing this work, I was approached by Martin Aram, who's sitting in the audience. Martin, could you raise your hand? So Martin is the CEO of Beautiful BioSolutions, and we are a company that is interested in functional foods. So how we can design different dietary products that we can address different health needs. And when we first started talking, we were a company and a thought without an audience. So we went out and we started to talk, where are the needs where we can use our technology in nutrition as well as in the beverage and food industry in order to address an issue, and we kept coming back to the autism community. So what we're trying to do at Beautiful BioSolutions is develop functional foods, functional beverages that are able to restore the gut-brain balance. So this is an area that has become of interest in a lot of different neurological diseases and dysfunctions, where your gut, all the microbes in your stomach, are communicating through your endocrine system, through your neuronal system, through your immune system with your brain. And your brain is using the same pathways to communicate with your microbiome. And again, this is something that is important in a lot of neurological diseases, including autism. So we're trying to look at the complexity of this system and how we can intervene. A lot of challenges, of course, that any of you parents and with autistic children know this. A lot of complications. Every kid is different, and there's a lot of environment-genome interactions that are important. So we're using a functional food approach, as I mentioned, and we're bringing in people from the food industry as well. And of course, the children on the spectrum often have nutritional deficiencies because of their aversions to certain foods, their certain sight and tactile differences from other children. So we're bringing in food scientists and experts to try to help us so that not only are we providing nutritious foods, but also the kids will like it, and we can incorporate it into their diet. We're a very young company. We have nothing to exhibit today. We've only been in existence for 8 months, something like that. So Martin and I will be your exhibitors for today. So thank you.
Thanks, Jack. So let's move, Julie, on to the next level on the technologies which you see. You have doing a lot of research in the space and being an entrepreneur. Which technologies you see now in the space where you are in the XR, VR, and which areas you feel it will have maximum impact on this population?
Yeah, I like that question a lot because I think the press talks about XR, and they talk about VR and AR, and they talk about them as if they're almost the same thing. And so when you think about virtual reality and what it could do for individuals who are on the spectrum, the notion with VR is that you're completely immersed and that you're not seeing. And so one of the things that you can do with that is practice, practice, practice. Sure. Yeah, sure. So for anybody that doesn't know what XR is, X means nothing. It just means a number of, so they're basically saying some kind of reality. The R is reality. Virtual reality, I was just going to go into the difference between VR and AR and how they can be used differently for individuals on the spectrum as well as others. Virtual reality, completely immersed. You were replacing the real world with the virtual, right? So that's virtual reality. Augmented reality, first I will say, anybody that has children may know it's the Pokemon Go of it all, right? So it's augmenting reality. With augmented reality, you put something into the real world. And so they're two different, very different technologies. And I will bow to my esteemed colleague here and say it's all gaming. It's all gaming. It's serious use of gaming technology, right? So VR is a type of display, AR is a different type of display, right? So it's how you're seeing this, whatever you're putting in front of you, whether you're seeing the real world or not. VR, you don't see the real world. AR, you do see the real world, and you're augmenting to the real world. Does everybody, that make sense? Yeah, so a lot of people have confusion about that. So, and even predecessors, so the exciting part, sort of to get to the question, is that with VR, you can imagine that you can put an individual in any circumstance at all. And you can use live video in VR too. It doesn't have to be totally, 3D created by an artist or something like that. So it isn't just for individuals on the spectrum, it's also for people in the care ecosystem too. So you can help train people that want to understand how to react to certain situations that you cannot get an actor or somebody else to do. So a lot of times that's lost. So the notion of being able to practice in a safe place, things that are uncomfortable or rare, is very, very powerful. And with augmented reality, which is actually, although I work in all of them, my PhD is focused in, although I use VR in creating my PhD, it's AR. So what I'm building is assistive technology that an individual on the spectrum would take into their daily life that will help them. So it overlays data into the real world. And it's the other thing that's so exciting about augmented reality is that it is invisible in some ways to anyone else but the user. So in some ways, it provides a privacy sort of aspect to the assistive help you're getting. So I hope that's, it's very exciting, but when people talk about VR and AR, they kind of, even though they can overlap, they can really be exciting in different areas. Yeah.
Yeah, along with the excitement, you will have also a chance to see the demo. She has brought her whole equipment from Boston to show everybody, what it is and, how it
Yeah,
can
and I didn't
play
bring my
along.
whole rig, so I won't be all
Yeah, just an example of what
right.
can be done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Chris. how is it impacting, what you have seen in children, and how is it changing their lives?
So for me, I was just in Indiana. I came back this morning. I was in a bunch of different districts, and I went and I was setting up a district, and I met with somebody else that I was already using the product since last year, and she was showing me some of the movies that they created. So it was, you think about an Indiana Caucasian boy on the farm, and when he goes into Silas and produces his social animations, he becomes African American little girl, and he actually makes his voice sound like a girl's voice. That makes him excited. It gets him to practice those social skills. He is letting himself not be himself to make something. And then he's got an actual media that you can then watch and discuss and say, hey, how did they meet here? Were they looking at each other? Were you using the right emotions? What could you have done differently? So it provides that one-off and that low-risk virtual environment that really allows kids to just be comfortable. When you're video modeling somebody, you're like, do this or do that, and it can be awkward. Role playing is awkward for typical peers. This provides something that just allows kids to kind of be. Plus, it's for us, it's the last thing they do. To make a movie, any specific social skill, if you really break it down, happens within a couple seconds. It's 15 seconds, 45 seconds. So we teach a specific lesson on that skill, and then they make that specific 45-second movie. But using a video game controller, they're excited about it. It motivates them to do it. When you ask kids to talk about their feelings or working on things that they don't like to work on, how do you do that? You have to motivate them. So that's how we do it. And I think that's the power of what we're trying to do here is just let kids kind of explore. And what I really I'm excited about is that for us, we're also letting ourselves into the gen ed world. General education, typical peers like what we're doing. And up until this point, like virtual reality, like anybody likes virtual reality. Like everybody likes video games. Programs before this, it was really just for special ed students. And that's not fun for them. They're just like everybody else, and they want to be excited and do exciting things.
Thank you. Jack, with your experience in this whole space, where do you see, your solutions, in terms of when you're doing some trials? Did you see any impact, or do you see anything which gives us hope that this area has a good future?
Well, I think, first of all, any type of nutritional intervention is not going to be a cure. This is just a way of trying to help enhance a very complex physiological function, this communication between your stomach and your brain. So I think that there certainly are a lot of challenges with trying to address this area in any community, let alone the autism community. And the complexity of the genome, not only our genome, but our gut genome, because that is a daunting task to understand that, and then how our two genomes are communicating with each other and how we can modify that. So certainly there's challenges there, but there is, we are always talking to the parents, and we see that there is a need. And so that's what really drives us. We know the frustrations with getting good nutrition into children that have such different sensitivities to food and different desires for food. And then we're trying to couple in our knowledge of what would be a benefit at helping restore this balance. So we're trying to go between what is necessary and what is going to be actually consumed not only by the children but by the whole family.
Thank you. I would really like to make it more interactive. So if you have any questions now, I have more questions, but let's start engaging with each other so that, we can get more questions answered from the audience, because this is a very different area which we are all experiencing. And, I would have liked to have another panel member on AI and all, but, we have limited time, so I wanted to keep it very interesting, very simple for all of us, and this is day-to-day life, so please. Alice?
So my question is for Christopher. It's been very challenging for us to get any kinds of interventions into public schools, even when we have good evidence of efficacy for those interventions. So can you tell us a little bit about how you were successful at getting public schools in particular to adopt your product?
It's a very slow process, and unfortunately, that's what I think kills a lot of companies. For me, I think you need to marry something that's evidence-based and researched with an entrepreneurial spirit to it. Because a lot of times, if you look, there's a lot of research out there, and there's really cool products that you've seen, and like, where's that? And it never made it anywhere. And I think for us, we've had tremendous business advisors. We've made cuts when we had to make cuts. We've had to do it. We've been doing it. And where I go is I go straight to these conferences where the special directors are, and there's, if you get 100 leads, you might have 2 sales. And those 2 people are the ones that are the movers and the shakers in the community. They're the ones that are going to take the risk. They have, in school districts, they don't have that entrepreneurial spirit. They don't need to do anything different. And in most cases, teachers don't want to do anything different. Once those first adopters start doing it and they start showing other people, and then another teacher sees how awesome it is or how the kids are reacting to it, it slowly starts building. But it's tough. And I could tell you, you absolutely said it correct. This could be like the best thing that works and does everything that you need for autism specifically. And you're going to not have people do it because it's difficult to have it get in there. So push your teachers, push your schools. For me specifically, I've seen a huge disconnect with what's happening in school versus what's happening at home. And to be fair, there's not a lot happening at home either in a lot of places. So for us specifically, we create these animations, and then we tell the teachers, share these animations at home. Let the parents be able to prompt their kids when they need to. There's a big lack of communication there that we're trying to help solve. But for you, I would say look, research, and push your children's teachers at all levels. And then one more thing. I saw this kid that was absolutely brilliant. He looked at my product and he was talking about the polygons in it and the whole gaming system that was behind it. This was like college level thinking. He had no social skills. And what I'm telling you, they're teaching him math and science and all this stuff. He doesn't need that. He's got a brain that can focus on these things. I would tell your teachers, I don't want anything else except for that thing he loves and teach him the social skills around it. And then he'll be able to get a job. I'm confident in that. So that's
Remember one thing, that the entrepreneurs never give up. We will go, we will pursue, we will get it done. And those are the entrepreneurs we are looking at. This is the people we want to promote. We want these people to get funding. We want these people to be successful. We want these people to reach the right audience. Remember one thing, the cost for many, many technologies is very high. And by promoting these entrepreneurs, and they're breaking the cost barriers, and they are using very simple equipments which we can use at home. And this is bringing about a change. We want this change. So please support the entrepreneurs and let's start making the changes.
Can I make a side comment just about this? So just to add on to the brilliance of the polygons and things like that. So one of the things that I find as an entrepreneur turned to researcher is that we're underestimating where we are. So I just want to let you know that every person under 50 is a gamer. So when we create software that is basic and is boring and is stupid for these kids, they're out there playing Grand Theft Auto with millions of polygons, right? And so the aesthetics of what we create matters too, right? And so I personally, as an entrepreneur prior to getting into a PhD program, right, have been underwhelmed with what I've seen for educational software. It's not good looking. It's not state of the art looking. I think the designers, they're like, oh, let's be cutesy with these kids that are brilliant, right? And they're seeing avatars that are stylized. They want stylized. They want photorealistic or stylized or something. Billions go into these games that they're playing, billions, hundreds of millions, 500 million into this one, 500. So you can get there, but even as entrepreneurs, we have to be a little more able, right, than creating junk-looking stuff.
And that is where mentorship is going to help. We are going to bring mentors to these entrepreneurs who can support them in go-to-market strategies, product market fit, funding, and day-to-day issues. They may have so many issues, but mentorship. So that is why we need to create for our children an ecosystem which can help and support. That's what we need today.
Actually, maybe Chris, you described the particular patient that I'm thinking of because I'm in a university health setting, and I actually work with all those kids who have grown up. So they're in PhD programs, they're in like master's programs, but they have like next to zero social skills. And actually, it's interesting if you try to look just from a clinical perspective. I'm a psychiatrist, so there's very little in the community that actually will address a particular need. And you have a couple of places that claim to be experts, but nobody ever calls you back. So are any of these programs actually being designed for adults or young adults?
So I work in particular with transition age teens and young adults. And I have something that I can talk to you about afterwards that is like an adult role play. And it uses very photorealistic avatars, and you can jump into the role and see the other person behave a certain way. And it's just coming, and it's some work that I've been doing with a company that works on top of Unity, which is the world's biggest game engine, and with some neuroscientists over at Stanford. And I'm at the Shriver Center in Boston. So.